Good afternoon. On behalf of Engineers Australia, I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's webinar, Smarter Collaboration for Complex Engineering Projects. My name is Megan Purdy and I'll be your host for today. Firstly, in keeping with our custom, Engineers Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders past and present. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that today's webinar is being hosted with Engineers Australia's industry partner, Bluebeam. Bluebeam is the leading provider of digital productivity and collaboration solutions for industries that design and build our world. Since 2002, Bluebeam has made desktop, mobile, and cloud-based solutions for paperless workflows that improve project communication and streamline processes across the entire project life cycle. Trusted by over 3 million users in more than 160 countries, Bluebeam solutions empower professionals to make their mark, adapt to change, and deliver projects successfully. We thank Bluebeam for their continuous support. Now, today's session will feature 2 speakers followed by our live audience Q&A, so I encourage you to please send your questions through to our speakers via the chat box. I'd now like to welcome our first speaker, Stefania Hurtado. Stefania is a process water engineer with over 10 years of experience in delivering drinking water, wastewater and water reuse projects. Her expertise spans all project phases from planning and concept development to detailed design and startup. In her role as a process engineer and design package lead of several greenfield and retrofit detailed design projects, Stefania has developed expertise in chemical systems, filtration, solids, biosolids, and water reuse associated processes. Her work with multidisciplinary teams across America and Australia has equipped her with extensive experience in master planning, feasibility studies, layout and treatment, optioneering, cost estimation, process capacity assessment, proposal development, treatment optimization, and design management. Please join me in welcoming Stefania Hurtado.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stefania Hurtado. I am an associate process water engineer here at Jacobs, and today I'm very happy to be co-presenting with Shanok on this webinar for Engineers Australia and the series on industry partners. So today is going to be all about design delivery and my own professional journey in the digital era, the challenges that I have faced and the lessons learned from this process. My bit is going to be mainly focused on the big picture and starting with the definition of design delivery and what it entails, then explaining what the problem and the drivers are for a change. And then we focus on a particular step in this process, which is the review of the design deliverables. We'll be going back in time to see how the dynamic has evolved and as we'll have learned how to do things better. And then at the back end of the presentation, I'll touch on a couple of reflections, the challenges and my vision of what will be the perfect setup to continue making process on digital. So I hope you enjoy the presentation. All right, a little bit about me. Born and raised in Colombia, South America, and then in 2013 is when we decide to move to the US, partially because of family reasons, but also looking for better professional opportunities. A few years later, in 2019, I decided to come to Perth, Australia, as part of an exchange program internal with Jacobs, and from there, I guess, happened the same as many of you, fall in love with this country and move back for good in 2021. And since then, I've been living in Sydney. Water engineer by background, as I said, process is my main thing. Water treatment design across drinking, wastewater, and reuse. I've been involved in the design delivery of major projects. I will say since year 1 or 2, since very, very early stages. And I have been lucky enough to have several roles across my 10 years of experience. So process package lead has been one of the main ones that it's always been, kind of a highlight in my career. And then lately, much more involved in design management as a deputy DM for big projects. Since the very early stages, I've been very much advocating for digital engineering. I think that's the way that we should go, and Bluebeam has been a huge part of my life since day one, I would say. So a fan of the software and really day-to-day user. All right, so in terms of studies and work experience, well, bachelor's, I had a bachelor's in environmental engineering that I did back home in about 2027. And then, yes, moved to the States, got a master's degree in civil engineering with concentration in enviro. And in parallel with the mastership, I was doing a couple of internships. So first one was with CDM Smith. That's an American company based in Boston, and then started my second internship with CH2M in 2015. This is now Jacobs. It was acquired by Jacobs back in 2017 or something, and since then I've been working with the same company. The key thing here is that I've been working across different countries, so two main ones, US and Australia, and I'll explain that what that means in terms of exposure. In terms of project experience, well, I'm not pretending for you to go through every single detail on these tables, but to my point from the last slide, I've been able to be involved across delivery, across different stages in design across both countries. So from anything from planning to preliminary design all the way to detail in several states in the States, and then here in Sydney. Lately, I've been more involved in wastewater projects, especially in detail design across, again, both countries. So now, I guess every time more and more I'm passionate about water reuse and recycled water and what the future for water looks like. So I've been lucky enough to be part of reference design projects as well as details and even a startup and commissioning for these type of projects. It's been a very rich journey, project journey. I have been exposed to different ways of doing things in both countries over and over again. All right, so design delivery is what we do, and this is the core of my day-to-day job. And since I don't know who is really behind the screens, I think it's worth starting from the definition. And well, you see it there. I'm going to read it out loud. It's a structured process of taking a wastewater treatment from concept through a fully engineered design package that can be constructed and operated. And in a simplified way, this process happens over three main phases. Requirements definition. This is where when we understand what the client needs are, what the regulatory standards are, and then we also set up and establish the water quality targets, the capacity and the sustainability goals. And also if it is a brownfield plant, well, we sort of understand what the operational constraints are in order for us to upgrade a specific plant. Concept design is where we mainly select what technology we want to go with according to those requirements that we already identified. And then we start doing preliminary sizing and layout considerations to see how big the plan is. And then once that's complete, we move into detailed design, and that's where the whole core of the things happen. So hydraulics calculations, preliminary sizing become equipment specs, and then we have all the discipline interaction and interfaces between disciplines in this particular phase. We also define what the control approach and the control philosophy will be for a particular system, and we put all the layers together. So throughout the design development, there is at least 3 steps that are required, and that's those the 3 boxes at the bottom of the slide. So design documentation, we need to put together design deliverables like drawings, data sheets, design reports, and technical specs that allow us to confirm compliance with code and standards as we evolve the design. And then once that's done, well, we need to review and peer review across the team to make sure that, there is no, that I guess all the requirements are met for each particular discipline. And not also that, but also ensuring that the performance, reliability, and maintainability criteria are met across and also with through the lenses of constructability and safety in design. Once the design is finalized, well, the process doesn't finish right there. We need to support the interface with the delivery phases that come after design. And with that, I mean coordinating with procurement, construction, and commissioning teams to support the installation and the startup of the plan. So these translated into a day-to-day basis is pretty much a workflow that allow us to do to put together the design over time. The implementation of these steps is really what help us using being efficient in the way that we do things, and especially if you have multiple projects happening at the same time. So in simple words, we have discipline-based calculations that we translate into dimensions, and those dimensions they are used as an input to draft sketches. Those sketches go into the modeler or the drafter to put together a model, and then this 3D model is cut and is basically used to cut the drawings to the drawings that we saw for a standard design package. Once the drawings are cut and the model is done, there is a period where technical review happens across both type of deliverables, and then the consolidation of multiple discipline feedback is put in a way, is collected in a way that is easy to understand what the clashes are, if there is any conflicting solutions, and then how to resolve particular issues that we found during this period. And then once that's resolved, we send the delivery package to the design package to the client, and there is a second opportunity now with the external stakeholder to resolve additional issues, incorporate new ideas, and even sometimes they change their mind, and you have to come with a completely different approach based on their input. So what is interesting and what I want you to think about is that all these steps happen using some software. And this is where I think the problem and the opportunity begins. So why? Well, we have too many tools and too many available software that we can use on each of these steps. What you see here is an example of software arrays that I have used in the past for each step of the workflow. There is more than just one way to do every single steps, and therefore there is more than one option that you can use, or a combination of options sometimes, to produce a particular aspect of the design, right? And the problem aggravates when you think about delivery as gates. You close one to open the next one, and so on. So you end up repeating the same workflow over and over again to go through each of the gates, to each design milestone, to each design phase. I know it's overwhelming if you think it this way, but that's the complexity of the stuff that we do, and the complexity increases as more and more ways are available for you to do the job and for the team to adopt in order to produce a design. The bad news is that complexity and time are not going to be opposite trends. Yes, more complexity, less time, same volume of work. So a decade ago, each milestone was done in relatively more time with enough buffer in between to oversee any delays within the project development. Now, less time with back-to-back deadlines in pretty much no buffer in between. We see a difference between the way that environmental approvals are managed at the moment compared to how they were before, because now we have parallel management with design, and now there is a risk to design, as you might have to accommodate outcomes from those environmental approvals and rework some of the stuff as you go. And on top of that, well, you are now more global. So instead of doing things in-house, we rely a lot more on remote design centers that we used to do before. What's driving this? Well, there is several factors. Government and governmental decisions must happen a specific time to get approvals to go ahead. And then this is mediated by the climate and driven decisions, climate change, and the change of priorities that come across depending on what the climate is telling us to do. If it is flooding, if it is drought. Planning is harder now, and there is too much uncertainty about the future. There is emerging issues. So we have PFAS, we have hydrogen as an opportunity, and there is so much pressure to be greener and greener. And well, yes, this is a market. There is a lot of market complexity. There is too much need for better solutions to face water scarcity across pretty much the world. So, and if you, on top of that, well, you added the fact that we now live in a flexible working environment that limits interaction in person with your coworkers, well, we have the perfect storm. So we came to realize that we do have to do this faster, do it smarter. Otherwise, we will not survive the pace at which we live in this world anymore. The solution in one word, well, is standardization. Over time, we have come up with better templates, preset spreadsheets or program spreadsheets, tools and workflows that allow us to do things a bit more faster, and then better software or a combination of better software that gives us option to optimize those workflows. And then now AI, right? Like, so the ideal is to, in the future, is to move more towards optimization, less effort, more volume, and then faster results. An area that required quite some attention has been the review of design deliverables. And this is key because this is the step where all the pieces of the puzzle are put together to come up with a concept that is cohesive, coherent, and with high quality to our clients. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to bring you back in time to witness with me how this particular process has evolved over the past decade that I have been working in the water business. So let me next. Already, so before, what I call before is 10 years ago, right? And so 10 years ago, we have sketches, and those sketches were done by hand. So what you see on the top right corner there is a sample of a sketch that I did myself 10 years ago with my own hand as part of, a design project that I was working on. Lots of talking in person. So you were sitting next to the drafter, sitting next to the reviewer, and you were chatting all day long about things that needed to be refined in the project or the particular package that you were working on. Once drafted, those markups were reviewed by a reviewer and were provided, and the comments were provided again by hand and collected by someone. So there was a collector. In this case, usually was a grad or an intern, and that person spent lots and lots of hours trying to collect hand markups by 20 people in the team, right? Once those were collected, well, we use registers and logs referring to specific drawings or specific areas of the drawing to help with, referring back to those. We addressed markups by hand at that time. So anytime that you needed to put something, you put it on top of it, and you kind of like cross by, again, hand, you cross the things that you have addressed. There was no tracking of consolidated comments except for that one register, but it was really hard, and you had prints, you have physical prints of the PNIDs that you were archiving in physical archives in the office, and it was a bit of a struggle trying to go back to that. It required time. So then we realized that we could standardize certain things to allow to do things faster. And this is, I think, when we started to, what I call the beginning of the change, right? So we started using simple tool sets in Bluebeam and Revisto. We started seeing people using tools to reply to review comments in PDF. So there was a mix of hand markups and digital markups on top of the hand markups. And for quality, well, we define and we use discipline checklists to ensure that reviews and checks were done the same way, looking at the same things over and over again, or doing, the design phases of a project. Now we're fully digital because we were forced to accelerate the learning curve by working from home. So we completely shortcut the consolidation step. Again, no time allowed for that. And then the sketches, now we have the ability to draw them digitally. Comments are usually placed in one place, and then you have faster troubleshooting because you have everything recorded in the same way in a simple consolidated place. The tracking happens in parallel with addressing the comments. There is no grad or intern that consolidates the comments anymore. They actually are very active in the development of the design, and everything happens a bit more faster. There's not a single software that will accomplish everything you need in one go. And it depends on what you have available, what you feel more comfortable with, and what is defined as the best practice for the project. So I'll talk about the ones that I have used so far to develop my design sketches, and I'll show you here a little bit of the pros and cons in my view that have helped me using one or another. So PowerPoint is very familiar to everyone, is universally available. We only need the Microsoft Suite, the standard suite, in order to use it, and it's very practical. Problem is it doesn't come with a toolbox, doesn't track any changes, and it's not identified as an engineer as other tools that we see in the market for the same reason, for the same purpose. Visio, it is within the Microsoft package, but it does require a license. Great thing about Visio is that you can use stencils, drawing tools to produce things like that. That's a PFD that I did probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And then you can detail drawings to a scale and can elaborate quite some good markups. Cons with this is, well, there is some training required, it's new to many people, and again, doesn't track any changes. Bluebeam, well, Bluebeam is quite a good one. I put there that is a good for detail and dimension drawings, and it's it produces great drawing markups. It comes with the ability to use tool chest and library of symbols, so it's easy. Technically, it's easier because you just drag the symbol and put it in there, and there is ability to produce very, very detailed, almost as the drawing markups, right? What I love about Bluebeam is that it does provide the feature of consolidating the tracking of the comments, and what you see there is an example of how that looks like. So you can do it in PDF, or you can export the PDF, the tracking log in comments log in an Excel, and there is ability to filter by a specific topic, or by a specific person, or by a specific drawing. It is a licensed software, as I said, so there is, I guess, a little bit of reluctancy sometimes especially when the other party doesn't have the license, and there is some training required because there is so many features available to this tool that it requires some dexterity to be able to use it better. Outside of the engineer fraternity, I would say is not as familiar. People are not as familiarized with this software, but in general, well, again, it's a great tool to have. So because it's so great, we have been using Bluebeam a lot for different purposes during the design delivery. Yes, it's becoming our repository of drawings, especially PNIDs, and the main software that we use for design reviews of PNIDs throughout studio sessions. We follow a folder structure that allows us to track individual design packages, disciplines, and design milestones all in one place. So you see the example there. You have, the project is split by pipelines, and then the pipeline has it has the brine pipeline, and then you have 90% and final. So it's basically a way that we found to be able to track things easily and have everything in one place. We have developed tool sets that allow us to assist not only engineers but drafters with the markups. So we have color-based, one color for the engineer, one color for the drafter, and we have profiles that are usually based on client standards to be able to draw things. So what you see there is the two toolsets that we have for one project in particular. And then the other one is the Jacobs general toolset that we use for any project pretty much. The studio sessions, as I said, is what we use in order to do interdisciplinary reviews. And then, well, the nicest thing about this is that it records or it serves as an archive of all the different rounds of reviews that have been gone through a particular drawing or a particular set of drawings. It's easy to track because you just page through and you will go from the latest to the oldest version of the drawing, understanding what the decisions were made in order to get to where you are. The drafter crosses the comments in yellow, and that says how you know it's close. And then, yes, this is all to be able to see where are we at and what has been addressed and what is left to address on a particular drawing. For the past, I would say 3 major projects, at least, I've been involved in using this other software, Revisto. We use it to access, review, and discuss the model internally and with the client. So this software is very nice because it allows to provide markups directly into the model with the ability to load sketches into it. So you can produce your sketch in, say, Bluebeam and then upload it to Revisto, or you can do it directly a bit more limited on the model itself. You can, and once that issue is created, I guess issue meaning anything that you want to comment on the particular model that you're looking at. Once that's created, you can allocate that to disciplines down to a person level. So you say, I need Sam, the drafter, to address my comment, and you can allocate that to a person. You can put a discipline, and you can characterize it as much as you need in order to identify, what the issue is. The other thing that is nice about Revisto is that it allows you to track the status of the issue, so you can know if it is open, in progress, solved, or closed. And that way you know how far in the process of review you are. So if it is with the drafter, or if it is back to the engineer for final closure, or if it's finally resolved and I guess no longer a discussion point for the team. The ability to filter with this software is amazing. So you can filter, I think I put a screenshot there that shows that you can filter by status, you can filter by discipline, you can filter by priority. And that way you are able to, I guess, get a sense of what needs to happen or what has been complete in order to finalize your review. Looking ahead, well, we see how the concept is evolving to digital packages that we customize for each project. So what I mean with that is, well, you will have a set of software, different options for software that are best for one particular project or are preferred for some reason. Sometimes it's client driven, sometimes is just the nature of the project that allows you to use one software instead of another. There is now a need for the integration of, say, for example, BIM 360, ACC with PDF editor. So you can basically, and what I'm trying to say is that we need the ability to be able to click on the model and then see a particular drawing that is associated with that area in the model. So there is more and more, I guess, desperate need for consolidation so that the reviews happen in a much simplified way. And potentially, in the future, we will see potentially the need for not drawings anymore and just model, which is scary to think about. But yes, we're moving towards that. Now we have digital twins, so we are able to simulate and monitor the entire water treatment process by using operational data that then is plugged into the system or the software, and it gives you trends for the future. So all of this to say, well, we are still evolving. We are moving towards a future that we are pretty much uncertain, but it's looking like the trends of efficiency are also looking at making things faster and smarter. Okay, so what we learned today. We learned that these times are challenging. Today's world is asking us to do more in less time, and therefore the ways of working from a decade ago are now out of date and require us to come up with better ways. Smarter comes with innovation and adoption of new software and tools that get us there. So there is no way that we can do this alone. We need workflows, we need tools, we need to be able to use as many things as possible to produce the same high level quality of deliverables with all the constraints around how speedy this world is. Adaptation to digital and adoption of new technology and software is not easy, but we all have to do something to bring it to the table. So this is my invitation to you. And there is, depending on who you are in your career, you might get, familiarized with one or another. But to seniors, well, seniority tends not to adopt technology easily. They are not they don't have the technology dexterity and could become a bottleneck if they decided that they just don't want to use whatever is being put for the project. So they are the ones that give us the final blessing on the deliverables, and we need to fight against that resistance in a way that we can get all team involved in using the same software. They are the guidance for juniors because juniors doesn't have, or they lack of the concept as of the core technical concept of what they are doing. So we need them to guide them as they are keen to adopt the new technology that is put for the project. For juniors, well, these are the ones that have the technological ability to progress, to come up with new ideas, to bring better workflows as they are more exposed to those since very early stages, and of course they understand how things work better in the digital era. We need them to support training for people to be able to adopt to technology easily and be able to overcome the challenges that come with trying new software. Yeah, transition takes time, and especially in a large organization like Jacobs, we have multiple projects, different client preference, different demands, and all that just to say, well, that adoption of technology needs to be top to bottom. Leadership is a critical piece of the puzzle because they allow us and they empower technology adoption and innovation. And they are essential to mandate that technology use and drive the organizational adoption to change. So we need to be able to, from top to bottom, to be able to encourage and empower people to transition as we find better ways to do things. And then finally, but not least, well, once it's adopted, the digital team is the team that usually tell us what technology to use, what software is better over another one. And that's great because they are always chasing for better ways to do things. My point here is we need time to adapt, and we need to be able to balance between the time that we let people adapt to the time with the timing that it requires to bring new technology in. If we don't allow for that time for adoption, people lose motivation. They go back to the comfort zone and they are like, no, I'm just not going to go and do my markups the way I have done it for 20 years. And then it's really hard to convince them to go and come along with us in this journey. So there has to be a long-term plan that allows us for flexibility to include technology, but remains loyal to the principles. And the principle is we are all in this together. All right, so with that, I'll hand over to Shanok. He will deep dive into Bluebeam and how this software supports design delivery, the capabilities that this amazing tool has, and the features to optimize workflows, and come up with strategies that help us integrate digital tools and improve the output of what we could produce, the quality of the deliverable. So thank you all. Go ahead, Shanna.
Thank you, Stefania, for your input today. I'd now like to welcome our second speaker, Shannak Halliday. Shannak is the Customer Service Manager for APEC at Bluebeam, based in Melbourne, Australia, who brings over 13 years of BIM experience to his work, helping clients leverage technology to deliver better outcomes. Shannak has proudly cultivated a passion for problem solving that can be seen in his drive to use building technology to increase efficiency during construction and better ongoing facilities management by delivering improved, coordinated building designs. Please join me in welcoming Shannak Halliday.
Thank you, Engineers Australia, for having me. Steph, great presentation. I really appreciate your honest account of your experience as an engineer, and I think that's what people really want to hear and what I really appreciate. So thank you very much. And to Engineers Australia, thanks for having us, Bluebeam, here again, and myself. Myself coming from structural engineering background in the drafting side of it, I feel like I've gained a lot and from the engineering industry, and it's nice to give back. So hopefully today I can give you some tips and tricks and some ideas of how you can improve how you're using Bluebeam and ultimately how you're delivering projects to be a little bit easier. Or when I was back drafting, trying my best to finish at 5 o'clock every day, sometimes a genuine challenge, and software can actually help that. So I thought I'd start off today with just a bit of a bold statement here, really, that 80% of our customers are only using 20% of our features. So at Bluebeam and the CSM team, we've been interviewing people probably since 2018 or 19. Over almost 14,000 people we've interviewed, our end users, of how they're using the software and sort of coming up with benchmarks of what their capabilities are and what we think an industry standard is. So if we take a bit of a deeper look into this, so we give people the opportunity to self-identify where they feel they sit. And you can see the intermediate level, that 66% feel that they're at the intermediate. And by the way, I've filtered this to just pick up on engineering. It is globally. And 17% are saying they're novice. But in fact, when we look at our own definitions of what a expertise level is, we come up at 69% say they're actually, or we feel they're actually novice. Now, the way we're benchmarking that is to pick up on so Steph was talking about collaboration and using studio sessions. So are you using studio sessions? Are you using the markup list? Have you got a good tool set set up? Are you using some filtering options in the markup list? Do you have a standard profile deployed? It's sort of picking up on these sort of base level information and more advanced options as well to see how well they're using Bluebeam. So you can see that there's only 29 that we really accurately see intermediate. Now, this is not a negative thing because it's a great opportunity just to improve upon what your knowledge is of Bluebeam. But I mean, honestly, that's one of the trickiest things, right? You don't know what you don't know. So today I'll try to open up some new opportunities of how you could use Bluebeam. Now, understanding that is one thing, but how does that really help in your average time saving? So where people might have thought that they're saving 33% of their time, say within a particular process or function, right? Say collaboration. But we're saying they're only saving 29%. Now, that's not a huge difference there of only 4%. But on our benchmark, a real intermediate is saving 45% of their time. And when you think about your 37.5-hour week, or maybe it's a 60-hour week, it'd be nice to save that extra 16% simply by just knowing some extra features. Now, of course, we could look at the advanced and the expert, but realistically, and I've had this with my own drafting teams and through, the education I've done over the many years, you're not going to get everyone to that level. And that's okay. So when you get to on average, an intermediate level of understanding of the functions that you need to know to deliver the project that you need to do, that'd be fantastic. Look at some real-time savings. And with today, I'm going to really put a focus on like the whole concept drawings and into design drafting and the drafting team picking it up and studio sessions. So I thought I'd share this information to talk about what's happening around the world. So to date, over 4 million people have actually used Bluebeam or purchased Bluebeam and used it. So last year alone, in 2024, 39 million documents were uploaded to our studio sessions, and every day on average, not every single day, but every day on average, 2 million plus markups are put into a studio sessions for those collaborations. So you can see why this is our flagship product. But it's not just sessions, it's the markup tools, it's the tool set, it's the user profile that all wrap up to make this really powerful workflow. So you can see why 74% of our top international design firms are using our software. So let's now jump into Bluebeam, which I'll be looking up on this screen here. So in this example, I thought it might be easier instead of building from scratch. Effectively, I've downloaded something from a government website on PNID. Please excuse the fact I come from structural background, so PNID and water treatment way outside my comfort zone. So work with me here, but what I do know is I'll share with you some really good tips inside this. So in this example, what I really want to come across is, sketch designs. And it's been interesting when I think about my experience, which was some butter papers, literally from the engineers. But, we want to get more professional in that. So that will go straight to myself and the drafting team. And the drafting team will create some great drawings, and they'll go to and fro to the engineers. It's really interesting working with clients now that they're actually getting the engineers to do the entire concept drawings within Bluebeam, whether it be something really simple or even more complex like we see here. And it really requires them to build out a good library, so almost like a CAD-like standard within Bluebeam. But what that means, though, is there's a lot more efficiency. So as much as don't want to take out my fellow draftees, they're not having to do draft and redraft of early concept drawings. This is PNID, but I'm reminded of my time of, shopping centers and just everything changing so rapidly so often, and trying to keep up that momentum and delivery dates, where it gets so much easier when it's just simple plans to be communicated about the construction required. So in this example, I've got a title block, and I've got the chemical treatment for chemical water treatment, PNID. So let's start from scratch. How do we get this information here, the title block? Well, in fact, Bluebeam, you can actually create, if I go into my file, I can get into a new PDF. And my new PDF, I can actually create from a template, just like a CAD standard, a title block. So you can see here I've got a few different examples, but I've chosen as my A1 horizontal as my default, and I can do OK on this. And sure enough, that brings up my title block. Tip to myself, I probably shouldn't have set the scale just yet. It doesn't really matter. So what is this information? It's easier, by the way, to pick up on your authored software. So whether it be MicroStation, AutoCAD, Revit. Get the PDF of that title block or title blocks. Delete the information you don't need. So if I go into Edit and I go to PDF content, and I can cut or I can erase content and remove what you don't need. So I can create my own variables within Bluebeam. Those variables are basically, say, this drop-down menu I have. I can say, it's for review or approval or whatever the requirements I need. But also, if I look inside here, I've got my project name. So, we type in capitals, we can add a name. But how do we keep this formatting, or how do we keep off the standardization, keep it professional? This is all done through our forms. So I've got this set up on the left-hand side. Yours might very well be on the right-hand side. If you can't see it all, if you go to right-click and go to show, you can see all the actions that you have available. So once you've got the information here, you can see the different types of forms or labels that we can create. This is the same as what you might get inside Word documents or any other PDF documents, right? So inside here, this is just simply a text box, and this information here is picking up from a drop-down menu. I can use this instead. Right, so once you got this set up, it's pretty simple and straightforward, and you'll have to build out your own naming conventions. You don't need this open as an end user. They can be none the wiser and just use it straight from here. They can add in their own, say version 01 if they want. What you can do to have this set up time and time again is you go into your file, you go into your new PDF from template, and look, mine's grayed out because I've opened up a template from a template file location. But if it was a brand new PDF, I could save it as a template to my template file location. So this can be rolled out as part of a standard deployment, or just shared around the office as you need. Right, so we've got a template. I don't need to save this. So now we want to do our PIN-ID. So I've just used a snapshot to build this up. I'll show you how that works in a moment because it's a really handy tool. Now, Steph talked about having a tool chest set up. So I want to show you in case you're not using a tool chest. I think if you are doing PIN-ID, or typically if you've got inside Bluebeam, you really should be using tool sets in your tool chest, which is part of your profile. So what I mean by that is 80% of the work that you're doing as a general rule should be in the tool sets, because it's going to be a lot more efficient. And anything that's kind of unique, yeah, sure, do the other 20% because it's a unique case, you don't use it that often. Now we've done some updates into our tool sets. So I'm on 21.8. I don't think that's officially out just yet. It's coming out in the very near future. But we've done some updates inside here. So if you're quite accustomed to Bluebeam, you notice I've just got my subject. So if I go into my tool chest here, I can go manage my tool chest columns, and I've chosen to just display my subject name. I'm also going to use this for a search option as well only. I could use labels or comments, but I'm going to keep this really simple and clean, and I like the way this looks. You also notice the search, like I just mentioned, that's another powerful feature. I think it was 21.4 or something. It gives you more options now to think about standardization of your library. So let's start using it and see how we can, leverage this. So I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to pick on this object here. I'm only because I've been practicing. I know it's a field information, but let's just for a moment, I was just talking to a client about this the other day. If I had a massive library of all the different types of valves, instrumentation controls, and everything I need for PIN-ID, the client said to me they're scrolling up and down all the time trying to find information. Well, we don't need to do that. So if I was involved in this all the time, I would know it's a field element that I need. I don't need the identification on the side. I can simply just grab the simple control that I have. So I can put this on here. I've also built out other things in the library. Well, I know I'm going to be drawing lines a lot, so why would I want to do a line from scratch? Why not set the line to my office standards? I'm using a play line here because, as we can see, we go around corners a lot. So I thought we'll do a straight line. No, play line's better. And the little tip on this is you can just double click in the end and it finishes up. So it can just be a simple, short, straight line anyway. And now I can come across into my dash line. I can pick up on here. If I did that properly, that would help. Let me pick this up, scroll out and hold down Shift, and it gives me a nice straight line. Now, there's a couple different ways you can set up your library. An interesting thing to do here is you can actually put on the background of this, if you want, you can put a solid fill. And I've done this before for other clients simply because you can draw one continuous line and for the process, and then you can put all the requirements on top. So if I put this here and then I grab this information and I say order size. Now, I was thinking earlier, I don't want to do a right click every time. It's a bit annoying. So customize your ribbon, and I'll put this on top here. So just want to be quicker and more efficient, right? And this markup here, it's just simply two markups. It's a text box and it's a circle, which means my tip is make the text box the last thing you actually do when you select into it. makes it easier to edit. So I'm not sure, was it a VLV? I can't remember. I could go back to highlight, I can check on that. No, it's a BEA. Now, a new feature that's come out, and I can imagine this really being frustrating in older versions of Review. If I do a rectangle on top, so that's R for rectangle, I'm just using my shortcut keys. If I wanted to select this field instrument, honestly, it's just frustrating and a little bit annoying, and it's going to take up too much time. I could look up through the markup list, and then I have to try and find it, maybe with a search. But the good news is that's all gone away. What I mean by that is we can actually hold down the Shift key and we can cycle through this now by pressing the space bar. So cycle with Shift and space. So this is a fantastic improvement, a welcome improvement. So yep, that's really important. I need to make this pop out. I want to make that stand on top again, so I can do that very easily. Now, you're probably not typically doing a rectangle, but you can see how you might have multiple markup elements on top of one another. Now it's really easy to cycle through those to select it, change it, edit, delete it, whatever you need to do. All right, let's move on to some other things. So if I want to come into here, this one here, I've got an integrated valve. I probably could have done a search again, but just some other things I can do to some tips as well. So inside here, when I try and come onto the line as best I can, I could tweak it afterwards. A bit frustrating that I've built this with the identification of the box and text below it. But if you actually click on the markup and then I hold down the Alt key, it gives me access to all the markups inside that group. Group is made by when you right-click and group it, or Control-G. So I can now select and drag that information as required, and it's going to stay within the group, and I'm trying to make it look easy because it actually is. There we go. So now I can have it look nice and neat, and I can do my VLV here. I think back to the time I was drafting, and I know this is an engineering and you've done for me computations, but you don't want the time taken up of having to communicate the drawing. The complexities is engineering. Yes, we need to make the drawings easy enough to read, and every line and piece of text is important, but you don't want to take forever to put it on the page. So where are those 1%ers to make it a bit easier? And look, we don't want to do a library with the text above, the text below, and the text to the side. We want more opportunity for variation. So coming into this, don't pick on my naming convention here, but I call it an end stop. I have no idea what it really is. I hope you find that a little bit comical, but it's really important and it needs to be here. So I can come into here, and I've got my little flip command. I could do a shortcut key, but I kind of like that visual reference. Now I'm just using my arrow keys to move that across. Picking up, just to finish this off, I've got my process line in solid. I can take that through and finish it with my snap points. So pretty nice and simple and clean. I said I'll show you about the snapshot. So let's assume for a moment that this information is really important, and undoubtedly doesn't, but let's just pretend it needs to sit here as well. So I'm going to use the X in my shortcut keys that I've created for cutting out. So I need some space here. So I'm going to cut that out and Control V that. Now it's just a image I can move around. And now I'm going to use a G. So that's actually in Edit, Snapshot G. So if I go to Snapshot G, I can pick up on this information here. And now I can paste it here. A little tip, if it's going to another page it's very similar, you could easily use Snapshot Control-Shift-G. It does exactly the same location. If I right-click this, because we need to identify that's a markup, or we used to say an angry markup, it's in red. Here we go, not pink, Shan, we'll go for red. We can change the color. So you can see very quickly we've highlighted this as a markup. I know a lot of engineers like this, especially around P&ID, because you might not have the library created, but need to quickly smash out another PV or pump, something like that. So you're communicating very quickly. This could easily be in black, make some updates and issue to the client for the review. Picking up on this lastly, I want to go into my red line markup process, or my QA/QC. I'm just going to apply in here. A new update we've done is enable number shortcuts. So now I can set some numbering to this. Previously, that was only in my tools. Now I'm just ditching my tools. I'm just doing number markups as required. So I need a number 9, which I would normally remember, but just to point out to you guys, number 9 in here, because I've got something I need to put on hold or have a conversation about. So do a single click this time instead of dragging a rectangle, and say something is concerning about this. Let's just go around it. Try not to take too long for the demo. Close that, and I'll just say on hold. All right, so we're almost set up for, say, a studio session. So we want to collaborate with maybe, well, it could easily be with an interdisciplinary review with another engineering or consultant. It could be just internal design reviews, and before we actually issue these to construction for the documentation we're going to issue. So typically this requires a process, and Steph talked about that process in previous markups and having particular colors. Now, this isn't necessarily Jacob's way, but again, I've spoken to so many different engineering and architectural companies. There is some process, or I hope you have some process. So in this example, we can really just focus on step 1 to step 6, being that, this is great, done a fantastic job. I've got a correction, it's red, I need this done. It's been completed by the drafting staff. It's actually being back-checked by the drafting staff. It's then being back-checked by the person who made the original markup. And then it's had a quality control. So before it got issued to construction, somebody else has peer-reviewed this, the QC, and said, yep, we can actually issue these drawings. So ways to improve things. I see often enough, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just different ways of doing things. I might see a highlighter setup, and we do a highlighter, first process being yellow, so I'll keep this up here. So yellow, I'll change it to a yellow highlighter, and I'll say, yes, I've done a great job, and I've done this. That's all completed. Then I'll do my back check. I'll say in my orange, it's like, yes, I've done my back check on this. And then it'll be someone else doing their own peer review. So I think I've chosen a dark green or something for that. So there's my peer review. Yep. And then we go into a QA/QC check. We might do another color. I've literally seen thousands upon thousands of drawings on paper that I've done this, and then probably equally the same within the PDF. What we can do to really speed up time is, and a lot more efficiency, and be more data-centric, which is then powerful because we can filter that information, is using statuses. So statuses, it's a right-click away, or even better still, we've incorporated shortcut keys. It was a bit of a user request for a little bit of time, and we've incorporated into it. So my little tip here is, following those steps I've denoted up there in the top right-hand corner of 1 to 8. Well, we automatically assign statuses in order of the way you create them. So naturally, I've made them shift 1 to shift 8, so it easily aligns to it. So if I actually, right-click again, and then go back into my status, I can say this is now completed. And yes, it goes yellow, just like we had a highlighter yellow. But I think what's more interesting, because, look, that is a little bit harder to see, I get it. But what isn't hard to see is that with this markup now is a status that Chanel Caliday, the CSM for Bluebeam, on this date actually has completed that markup. Now when I go into my filters and I want to know what statuses have been complete, I can see what statuses have been complete. By the way, I've just put a flag on here, like a filter, just for anything on hold to always pop out. So you can see where this starts getting actually much easier to see, because I'm looking at the data, not just the highlighters. So we can go through that entire process. All right, so let's have a look now of where we can share this information and put into a studio session. So let's get out of this. I'll close this one down. I'll save this one, sure. We'll bring this into here. I'll come across into my studio sessions. While this is opening up, So Studio Sessions is a chance to share all your markups on the cloud. So it's PDF based only. We can set up to share up to like 500 people at any one time. You can put controls and safeguards inside this so that only invited people can collaborate on this. I think I set up that no one else can join me because I don't want people joining on when I'm doing a demonstration. But we can, it's great control mechanism inside this that if you are not the original author of the markup, you cannot edit anyone else's markup. You can only change the status and do a reply. So it's really about that collaboration point of view and not deleting other markups. Inside this, we can, it's full traceability of who's been in and where. I know I personally had, it was quite challenging when I was using a resource center simply because of different time zones, languages, skill sets, and general demands of where people are when I was emailing markups. This is fantastic, and I tell clients again and again to use this simply because you can see live where they're actually progressing. This also works really well when you're working with clients because you could have, say, a boardroom meeting. You could invite everyone along in person if you want. They have their own laptop, invited to a studio session. On the boardroom wall, you can have the studio session lit up there, and you can see everyone moving around the page, or you can follow people, I should say. You can definitely see their markups on there. And then, interesting enough, you can finish your meeting at the specified time, not having to go over, and just say, we'll keep this studio session open for another day or two a week. So we've got clients in different types of projects. They'll have a 2-week window for peer reviews on all their studio sessions on their infrastructure project. On a project like this, you might work with a government department and you're about to issue these drawings. You might have a 3-week window, a 3-day window where to review these drawings and have some comments to come back on it. Now, when it comes to the collaboration part, I want to open up to the fact that we have a new opportunity to jump into as well. So right now, I'm on the Bluebeam on the web. Bluebeam have done a lot of work in recent time to really open up or lean into the DNA of just collaboration anywhere. So, we could put this on the phone as well, but it's not going to have as much real estate. So, and then we're not really out in the field. I want to talk about collaboration. So we don't need to download the software. We just need a Bluebeam ID. And to that point, you actually don't need a license unless you want to initiate the studio session. So inside here, we can come into this, and any of those markups, we can actually go through it. So if I pick up on this markup here, you can see I've gone through a bit of a process. I can go into my markups. And just be aware, this is not trying to replicate Review Desktop. I think this is a great companion piece or opportunity that you don't need to educate people very much of how to use Bluebeam, because we're really stripped down to almost put the blinkers on about this is the job you need to do, and we're here for a review or collaboration process. So inside here, I can come into this. I can say my redline markups. This is now being peer reviewed, and all that information is going to carry across of who said it and when they said it. If I've got some issues with this, like, I keep it in capitals, I am not sure this is right. Probably should put some better detail, but the point being, I can make a comment about this. Now, I talked about collaboration anywhere. So when I go back into here, sure enough, that's updated. I don't know if you remember that was orange before. I've also got some information about this. So if I go into my markup list, I can start to track that information. Actually, it's a bit of a tip. If I click on this, it's a bit easy to see, and I can go into slide across. Where is my reply? I'm making it hard for myself. I didn't click on this one. Maybe it's pick up the sub part of it. There's my reply. I'm not sure this is right. So we can have that dialogue about the markup. I've seen historically where people put notes next to it, and that sounds great if you can correlate where the markups go to, but this is even easier because the original markup has a comments register to it. Inside this, we can assign, custom columns. So you can say this discipline has to look at this, or this person, or this is a time frame. Just like, Excel Lite, you can put custom information inside this. Another really powerful thing within this, though, is that we can export this information out. So Steph talked about the information. You can do a PDF report, or what I prefer is more so a CSV summary. So I'm going to Excel. So I've worked with a lot of companies that have done a comments register, and I guess I understand where it's coming from, but I would lean towards, well, why do that? Because everything is actually registered inside here already. If you need additional information, like I said, just add it. The interesting thing that's coming about, though, is the clients that are understanding that this is data, and Bluebeam enables you to have clean data, and even better still, when you export this information out, you can do further refinements. So I've got some clients actually pushing this information into Power BI. So while we just have one drawing sheet here, we could potentially have hundreds of drawing sheets with many, many markups, pushing this information to Power BI and to dissect the information to see, well, what's critical and who's saying what and what drawing sheets are having some real issues with it. Moving forward, Bluebeam's done a lot of work on the API. So sometime in the next year, we'll have the ability to pull live information from studio sessions into Power BI. And I'm really looking forward to that. Right, I thought I'd jump out of this and just try to pick up on the entire process of we've got a set of drawings and we're going to review those drawings before we issue them out. One thing you want a lot of confidence with is the drawings have been done correctly. So I've got two drawings in here, version 00 and version 01. I'm trying to pick up on sometimes internal versioning before you issue to a client. Something we can do within Bluebeam is within document, we can do overlay pages. And some updates we've put into Bluebeam as well is we've put this preview window. So previously, something like this, you would run the overlay and this is terrible. You can't see that. It looks like a bad Freddy Krueger 3D film that I saw back in the maybe early 90s. It's too hard to read. Hopefully you get that reference. So we've done some updates into this, and if I use the auto line, previously you might have used a manual line, and maybe it's a really complex drawing, you might still use it. Just as an idea, you click on 3 points from one drawing, then you click on the associated 3 points from another drawing, and it lines it up. But this is even easier. So now we click on this. So we're able to educate through AI and build the algorithm or the software that's in your actual installation. It's not going to the cloud for computing, so it's all localized, and we can see all the changes are or what has and has not been done. All that information as well is within different layers, so it's really easy to pick up and tell a different story of which one's done what. I thought I'd pick up on one other one for today as well. I think it's also handy. I remember when you're issuing drawings, there might be a couple of weeks or a couple of months between issues, and you're trying to backtrack over all your markups, what was done. And well, I had physical markups on the desk still back in 2016. But if you had all your PDFs, you're going to have to go through all your PDFs and find them. Well, why not just get Bluebeam and do it for you? So if I go into here and I pick up on, I've got to remember which document I set up easier. I go into compare documents, and I've got this one here, and I think I'm picking up on this one here. What we've done here is we've split the window, and it's actually put a cloud around those differences or those changes to the drawings. So yes, something was completely left out the top here. Now this is the stuff that I find more critical. I deleted that on purpose, but that's disappeared, and maybe that's really super critical. Maybe that's a $10,000 part for what I know. Retrofitting that would be terrible. And there's been some sort of design change here. I'm not exactly sure what, but that looks similar enough to me. I'm not sure what that is. So let's even look at one other option that might help you. So if I go into just regular screens inside here, now I'm going to jump into this one, which can be helpful sometimes. Overlay pages. I've got, I don't want this one, actual fact. I'm going to pick up on that one, and also going to pick up on this one here. And I don't need to do the auto align. They're actually lined up pretty well, but I can see the drafties tweak this to push it around to make it a bit neater. I've been guilty of that myself. So we can see that is just a bit of a tweak of a change, and I can take my time to look at it and realize they are the same. But maybe I want to tell the story easier. Handy little trick is right-click on the tab, copy path, which I use all the time to install it or open up somewhere else, or even right-click, open document folder. It's handy. I go into my overlay. So Bluebeam, all those markups is data. We can transfer that data from one PDF to another or into other software, right? So if I go into our markup list and come into our markups, import from my computer, Control V, OK, all those markups come through. So now I have a good story, when it's applicable, I guess, you're not going to do this for every time, of the story of the differences between the changes and the clouding up of those changes as well. This might be good to identify, scope creep, changes, verification of additional work that's been done, because clouding is how we communicate to our clients and internally. So thank you very much for joining us today and being part of this Bluebeam demonstration with Steph from Jacobs. Hopefully you got some information there that maybe you might be able to improve how you're using Bluebeam. And as I went back to the start, not to criticize that you could be a novice, but hopefully you can at least become more of an intermediate after this session. If you want to find any more information, you got Review 21, you have access to Bluebeam University. You can get that via the help menu at the top of your screen. But look, thanks very much for joining us today. I really look forward to your questions. So.
Thanks, Shannon. Well, now it's you, our audience's turn to get involved. So please submit your questions in the chat box, and don't forget to let me know who your question is directed to and also what your name is. So a big thank you to everyone who did submit questions while registering for today's webinar. So what I might do is kick off with some of those. Now, we've got a lot of questions for Shannon. So what I might do, Steph, I'm going to bring you back in. We do have a question that I would like to direct through to yourself. So again, to the audience, don't forget, if you've got any questions for Steph, please send them through. But Steph, the question came through from Max from New South Wales, and it was, how do you make sure you get adequate and efficient verification while still documenting it through the process when using collaborative platforms like Bluebeam Studios when so many people are involved?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? I hope you do. So, yes. So I think, well, that's a question that I guess everyone involved in design review gets it, because it's so hard, especially when you have so many people involved, and is the volume of the comments are so massive. I will say sticking with the same workflow, like being very clear about what the steps are, what people need to do, and try to stick with it and force people to follow. That's probably the key for success. As long as people understand the workflow and they stick to the same software, then consolidation becomes quite natural over time. That would be my advice.
Thanks, Steph. Shan, I've got a few questions for you, so I hope you're ready. The first one's come through from Namira from Victoria. And this one, actually, the two of you may want to comment upon. AI tools can be used for faster engineering workflows, but most of the time they also give errors that require manual corrections. So for complex diagrams like PNIDs, how reliable are AI-based automated checks, and what limitations should engineers be aware of?
I completely understand, even using ChatGPT. It gives you something fantastic, a bunch of words, but then you read over and you think, I need to edit this. So you will see in the presentation I did overlay and compare, and then we're using AI for that. What I like is the safeguards is that you as a person is going to be reviewing that information. Now, when we talk about more complex AI, I don't want to pitch too hard on this one, but we required a company called Firmus, and inside that we're using AI for drawing checks. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure about the level of complexity and how accurate that's going to be moving forward. But being the person who's done literally thousands of drawings I've checked over my time, I welcome something that's going to make it easier. Even if it just takes out the silly mistakes, we should be able to pick up on spelling mistakes, but it doesn't always come through. So can we at least use AI to take out the dumb mistakes? And yes, rely on a person for more complex ones. So I think it's a really good question. Let's ask that again at the end of next year when we've had Thermos, and we'll see, and we've used it and tested the software.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Thanks
guess
so
on the other
much.
side of the fence, I was just gonna say on the other side of the fence, I agree with Chanok. It would be great if we can have. We understand, and we are not ready yet to just do that quick, big step into AI, but facilitating some of the more mechanical review will help a lot with the time that is, consuming in design review. I think what we are trying to do more now is to streamline the easy part. So we also do like a screening step where we capture all those things, and then we only look at the complexity or at the complex comments. So having being able to do that faster will be really great. Or alternatively, if we are able to see, and I think that's already done by Bluebeam. We haven't tested in a real project, but I think I have heard Chanok saying that we're able to highlight what has changed from one drawing to the other. So it's either the easy parts or for screening of the first screen of the comments, or we do have something that help us understand what has changed from one revision to the other.
Excellent, thank you. Seems such an interesting topic, the AI. It's definitely evolving so incredibly quickly, but I think it's always the one thing that I've had with regards to chatting with engineers is that all those things which the dumb things that can be made easier would be brilliant. So looking forward to seeing where we go over the next little while with that. Now, Shan, I've got a couple of questions for you specifically around Bluebeam. So the first one is around, can we link data in a PDF to an Excel?
Yes, there is a quantity link option within Bluebeam. To be really transparent, and I'd be a fan of it. It's all right. It's quite good. It's good if you have limited products that you're trying to link. What I mean by that is you actually have to map each cell within Excel of all the different options. So it can get quite complex. What I would suggest currently is actually doing a data dump. So I showed you inside the presentation how you can export to Excel. I'm a bigger fan of doing a data dump. And Excel, what you really want is clean information. So you can filter that information out already. And in Excel, it loves eating up the information, and Power Query, definitely lean into that. Or even just want to X lookup and V lookup. There's so much information on YouTube. I would lean into that more. Now, interesting enough, we've got MCP moving forward. So what that means for anyone out there who used it, Machine Context Protocol, I'll double check that one. Basically, it's using natural language, AI, so like a chat GPT, but with Bluebeam. So what we've been experimenting with and what you'll see next year is that I can just say, hey, Claude, we're tying it into net at the moment. Claude, with the open PDF, can you please export all my information and put that into this particular document, or cross-reference to this for the website and grab that information for me? So two options now. I think data dump's better, more efficient, and next year we're going to see some really cool stuff with MCP. Sorry, I keep talking about what's coming out next year, but I've been playing around with it and it's really cool.
Awesome, fair enough. The next questions come through from Alex from Victoria, and he's asking around Bluebeam currently does not open the SAI Global Encrypted Standards through the SLI Global website claims that it does. When will this be rectified?
Fair question. All right. So I quickly asked technical support. So we've been on this for a little while, and we've been talking to them for a bit. Short answer is 21.8, which I've been using, opens it. I need to robustly test that to see if there's a few different variations to the SAI requirements, security requirements, because we thought it had it nailed a little while ago, but there was actually some other more complex ones. So I think, I'm going to say fingers crossed, we're good for 21.8, which is a week or so away.
Cool, thank you. Okay, another very specific question. Shannon, any title block template that can be downloaded from Bluebeam?
There is ones automatically inside Bluebeam when you go to, I'm looking at my version, file, new template, and there's some there. They're probably Imperial, which isn't really helpful. Everyone's title block is different and unique. I had a quick look on the website and just see if I could find it. I couldn't, but there's lots of good information how to build it, which doesn't quite help you. There might be something, but honestly, they're not hard to build. But yeah, I don't think there was a downloadable one I'm aware of.
Awesome, thank you. Then we've got a question which has come through from Morris, who is watching live. So big hello to Morris. And he's got, as an electrical engineer, I use the grid and grid snap features when drawing lines, but when I drop symbols from my library, they do not snap. Is there a workaround to fix this?
So you had me stumped for a moment. I read that question like, oh, geez, I can come up with a good answer. All right. So within Bluebeam, when you need more control, when you select text, sometimes, or when you use a highlighter, sometimes it just does highlight over the entire page, and it's quite frustrating. So I say to people, if you need more control of your highlighter, press the control button or key, and then it will be more of a free flow. So I tried that with the snap on, and it disables the snap, which means your symbols can go wherever you want. Now, you're not going to snap as nice as you want, but at least your symbols will move around. I feel that will work all right. So between drawing your lines, like you said, holding down control, putting your symbols out as you require, then selecting your symbols and using a line tool, you should be pretty good. Hopefully.
Thank you. The next one is from @Houseplaying Group, who are watching live, so hello to them. Their question is, what is the workflow with updated PDF revisions? That is checking that updates are complete.
Thankfully, I haven't checked drawings for quite a few years after checking thousands, but I do talk to clients a lot. I know, Steph, you want to put some ideas into this in your own checks. Actually, I'll go back to what Steph said. Have a robust process because, look, we've got the overlay and compare. That's great, but then you might prefer to use two screens where you've got the original PDF and then you've got the marked up PDF and you've got the new PDF. You might use them in a studio session. You might want to take it down. So what I like to say, and it's not a great answer, it's not answering you directly, but we've got flexibility, and I think that's more important. So have a look at those options of split screen. Have a look at the options of batch slip sheet. Have a look at the options of using sets or just using the overlay and compare. We've got flexibility depending on the simplicity or the time restraints or the complexity of your drawings.
Steph, did you
I guess
add
I can. Yeah, I can add to that. I guess we've been in a journey as well, trying to identify what works for us. I can tell you what has been working for us, and is studio sessions for reviews. What we do is we have review sessions for each drawing separately. So we put the drawings, upload the drawings on a Revisto. Bluebeam and studio session separately, each drawing, and then once that's done, we uploaded that. Well, we export it and put it in our project in Bluebeam on top of whatever the latest revision of the drawing is. So what you end up doing is having a folder that has all the drawings, individual drawings, and then if you click on one drawing, you will be able to see all 6 pages, and those 6 pages are the same drawing with different markups, and you kind of like page through up and down, and you will see how the drawing has changed as the revisions have come up over time. We found out the best that approach the best way because, well, you have everything in one page and it's a click instead of having two screens. So what if you don't have the two screens, right? And then yeah, we come up with color coded, similar to what Shannon was explaining, but a color coded process that help you understand if the drafter has already checked the drawings, if the engineer has already commented the drawings, and so on. We do that for every single, I will say, deliverable that we have for every single package that we prepare.
Thank you both. The next questions come through, and it's, can forms applications be applied to stamps/tools created for the tool chest? So that is adding a date stamp to a markup. Then they've got, I think, to be an issue to an external consultant. So I'm not quite sure what that means. It could be an issue. I'm not quite sure. I'll hand to you guys.
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go.
Yeah, there's a few different options. So what we're talking about for anyone else is stamps are a PDF and they're saved somewhere different. You can actually save stamps into a tool chest. Be careful if you do dynamic text, which will then automatically populate the time and who the author was. I can't remember, I was playing about a year ago with it. There's a way to make sure that it keeps dynamic when someone applies it to the screen. Because it gets really frustrating if it remains, you the author, and you put it into your tool chest, and then someone else uses it and says your name on the stamp. Just be aware of that issue. But there is a way around it. Sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. If you want to make a stamp traditionally, then you want to use forms. Yes, so the forms options there, and you can start using more complex options inside stamps where you're using scripting, and then scripting can create options so you can type the date as you require. So yes, instead of dumping onto the page and then the date automatically comes on, you can say, well, I actually need to put yesterday's date because I forgot to stamp it then. I'm trying to give you a good answer, but there's a whole range of different options. And then I'll throw an extra one out there. I created a series of stamps, which actually officially aren't stamps. They're actually just groups. But the reason why I chose groups, because you can get a bunch of lines and text, and it's really easy to capture. You can easily double click on it and change the date. You can also use statuses, and statuses can then change the entire background. So now I've got stamps that will go red for rejected, green for approved, and then I can track that as data inside the markup list. All of each option's right, depending on what you need to do. Not a solid answer in this conversation. I would say reach out to Bluebeam or your reseller and just have a deeper conversation about this, because it opens up the whole process of how you're approving drawings.
Well, thank you for that. Shan, the next question was around, and forgive me, you may have answered this one. It was, could I copy the symbols from other drawings and use them in the Bluebeam tool chest?
Yes, you can. So you can use the snapshot. Lots of people use that. But to Steph's presentation, I strongly recommend building it from scratch. A quick little note, people say, can I just use some special button to get it from my AutoCAD into Revit? No, we wish we had that, but I imagine there'd be a lot of coding. Wait, no, it's not going to happen. So you just got to build it from scratch, and you'll have lots more flexibility. But if you're desperate, you just need something quickly, then use a snapshot. It works. Steph, you're using libraries all the time.
I guess that's how we started. Like when we started building our tool chest for the team, we just did the snapshots at the very beginning, and we realized early enough that, well, the quality is a bit more compromised than what we wanted to. So the suggestion was like, no, let's just build, the elbows from scratch. Let's just build the, particular pipe spools that we needed from scratch, and then do it once for ever, just one more time, and then put it in the tool chest. So that doesn't mean that you don't do snapshot. I do a lot of snapshot for the markups, and that's just because, well, when you're doing, for example, a reverse osmosis RO system, it is the same thing that you copy at least 7 times to the right. So it's really a good tool when you have to duplicate or triplicate or multiply X times the same particular thing to come up with a markup. It's for different things. For tool chest, I will say no snapshot. For the rest, when it comes to modules, great tool.
Awesome, thank you. Look, I think we've got one question left. We've run out of time, so my apologies to everyone. There was a question which came through and it just said, in Bluebeam, when multiple users mark up the same drawing, one can copy and paste another user's markup and the new copy shows as the original author's comment. Can this be prevented?
You cannot modify, do you? We can.
You can copy their markup, but you can't edit their markup in a studio session.
Not in a studio, and that's one of the features that we love is, well,
Yeah.
you definitely need to see the whole story, and you cannot overwrite someone that has already reviewed. You might be able to see, conflicted information, and it's part of the last step to decide which way to go, right? But you will have record of every single, like every person has a voice in that session.
Yeah, I would have thought it would keep, if you copied it, I thought it would be the new author's name. I'm not sure. Off the top of my head, well done. Thank you for stumping me. Appreciate that.
Sorry about that. Well, look, I hate to say, is there any final comments from both of you? I think we've come to the end. I've left you on a doozy there, but is there any final comments? Maybe, Steph, if we start with yourself for the audience.
Well, I guess after this conversation, we see what there is a long way to go, and there is not a right way or a wrong way to do this. I think what matters is that we start, we have ideas and we put them on the table. I did experience a bit of that when I moved to Australia, and I was the one saying, let's just change the way that we do things. It's not an easy path, but it can come with, great improvements for the team you're working on or even for yourself. So if you have an idea, go ahead and speak up.
Good call. And Shan?
Yeah, so my last thing, so I think Steph's journey is fantastic there because it's about change management, which is actually quite challenging. It's about setting it up and expectations. But more so the point, with Bluebeam, you don't have to do everything at once. You can just keep adding and improving. I want you to try and think of a target at the end of being more data-centric. So we showed you a fair bit about the markups list. Steph talked about using statuses. I'd like to suggest you start leaning into this. Whether you join us on the journey into next year as we get into more AI features and we start thinking more about the data and how we can, get into the back end of the drawings and what's going on, this is going to be more relative. But yeah, just start doing piece by piece and just learning. As I said at the start, sorry, I'm rambling on a bit. 80% of our clients are using 20% of the software. Just have a look at the opportunities of how you can improve what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, look, that's all the time that we have for today. So please join me in thanking our speakers, Stefania Hurtado, Shanna Halliday, for their time and input. I'd also like to thank Engineers Australia's industry partner Bluebeam for their support. Now, we would appreciate if you could take a moment to complete the short feedback form, which is linked in the description box below. Your input into that really does help us to improve and plan future sessions for you. Thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next industry partner event. Good afternoon.